I hope you all like a little bit of fire. Oh yes, it is getting hot in here. Hello, my fellow sorcerers, and welcome to Incinerate. Now this is quite possibly one of the most requested builds that have ever been requested. And it's easy to understand why, because Incinerate is such a bloody fun skill, and it's basically the only beam-esque way of killing things that we have. And as we all know, killing things beamily is the superior method to do said killing.
That's hot.
The only catch is that Incinerate isn't just Sorcerer's worst skill, it's in the running for one of the worst skills in the game, full stop. So it's never really been that worth building around, at least until now. Season 2 has finally given it some life. It has stoked the fire, and it is now roaring. Now, I'm not about to tell you that, it's competing with ball lightning or ice spikes, and you're going to be absolutely tearing through everything, but hey, you know, it is Uber Lilith capable. It can push above tier 80, tier 90 at nightmare dungeons, and in open world, it will just disintegrate everything, because basically everything does. So, it is at minimum, you know, endgame competitively viable, and I think for something as historically garbage as Incinerate, that is certainly an achievement, because yeah, it is just awesome channeling a full-on beam of fire and watching everything just turn to ash before it can even reach you. And even if it does reach you, that is where the truest strength of this build shines. It is so tanky, like ridiculously tanky, and I absolutely kind of love that. You can just stand your ground channeling Incinerate and not worry about anything killing you, because you just sort of shrug off all the attacks, even in high nightmares. And it also has huge range, because we're working with Hydra, which is awesome, and it's probably stronger than it's ever been. You can put a Hydra at the edge of your screen, channel the Incinerate to the edge where the Hydra is, and all the enemies streaming towards you just die before they reach you, and it makes it so safe. So how have I actually got something resembling damage out of Incinerate? Well, essentially, the vampiric powers certainly help, but the clincher, as you might be guessing, is X-Files Corroded Signet, a new unique ring that makes damage over time explode. Now, every single separate damage over time you have applied adds to the chance of this explosion. It's all rolling its separate lucky hit. So the formula essentially is straightforward. Apply as many different damage over times to enemy as possible, while having as high a lucky hit chance as possible, and watch the, well, fireworks quite literally happen as everything detonates in 500k to 1 million explosions, with the ring just going off everywhere constantly. It's really quite satisfying, stacking Flame Shield, Hydra, Firebolt, Inferno, Incinerate, Firewall. There is so much going on, but it all just happens automatically while you get to channel your beam, and that's what makes it, well, the dream. Okay, that was really bad. It has really respectable boss damage, killing the training dummy in like 10 seconds, which, again, for Incinerate, is really good. And it is faster and better than pure Firewall, who is definitively slower at doing the same thing, while also requiring you to be a lot closer to your targets and generally less tanky. So yeah, if you love fire, if you love burn, if you want a proper Sorcerer damage over time build, or you just are really into the fire beam, well, this one is for you. This is how we do it. Step 1, Skill tree. 2 points in to Firebolt to get to core and to get our first enchantment slot. This will be activated by your Hydra and your little extra balls of fire that are being summoned by Flamescar, and essentially we just need as many different damage over time effects happening at once as possible for maximum lucky hit rolls for X-Files. Even though on an enemy you just get 1 tick of damage when you apply damage over time, the reality is that it still is tracking and taking into account every individual source of damage over time, and they're all rolling lucky hit. So we want as much as we can get, and Firebolt helps make that happen just for free in the background. So with that said, grab your Incinerate, max it out, and then take it to Destructive. This is one of the reasons we're so extra tanky and can just stand there channeling, ignoring hits. It really is a big bit of damage reduction, and while the Immobilize is nice, we get it from a different source, so we don't actually need it here. Then we just move straight on to defensives, get your Teleport, and then Enhanced and Shimmering. Now I have ranks of defensive skills on my amulet, so I've got my Flame Shield already, and we don't need any of the extras. If you don't, well, I will tell you where to get the point from in a moment. 3 out of 3 in Glass Cannon. As I say, we're very tanky, so the free extra damage is just, well, that, free extra damage. And then finally 1 rank elemental attunement, just so the cooldown reset can occur. Over to our Conjuration, where we max out Hydra, a big source of our damage, and another source of a separate, different damage over time from summoned Hydra. Get extra lucky hit, as this is all about lucky hit. We get simply just Ice Blades to be our source of cold frost damage for Tel Rashas, and it's an extra stack of Conjuration Mastery when it's up, so that's neat too. And yes, grab Conjuration Mastery, we will always have at least 2 Hydras up, so that's a good old total 6% multiplicative, just permanently on everything. And then the usual double defensives of Mana Shield and Protection. Barriers, great, we have synergy with them, and just taking even less damage, always also great. Over to Mastery then, where we get 3 out of 3 Inner Flames for just 9% more damage, and then Crippling Flames. This is where our Immobilize come from, a 30% chance to immobilize with everything that's going on and the amount of lucky hit we have. Yeah, this happens a lot. Then we get all of the Firewall, and this makes our second enchantment slot. This means we just consistently spawn huge Firewall crosses under everything, and then those Firewalls apply their own burn, which now start lucky hitting, and that then triggers X-Files even more, and you just really get this compound effect when everything is going of just boom, 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 chunking down health. It really is quite good. And then Enhanced, and then finally Mages, so they keep on burning, as we want it to last as long as possible, and we're only getting the mini ones from the enchantment. Over to your ultimate, of course, Inferno. This is another damage over time, so that's great. And then Prime to pull everyone in, keep them clustered for your beam, and then Supreme for infinite mana. Now, we don't have mana problems in this build, so this is where your point comes out to get Flame Shield if you don't have ranks of defensive skills. Then we just get Fiery Surge in order to get to Endless Pyre to stack up the burning damage, and we are done there. All that remains is our key passive, which of course is going to be Combustion for just huge multiplicative, more pure burning damage. Oh, alright then, that is that sorted. Let's go into how it is played. You'll be set up then somewhat like this. I would recommend Incinerate not being on the same button that you walk with, so you can just nicely move along while channeling it for as long as you need to. We don't need to actually click on enemies, of course, because we're just beaming, so it just makes things easier to separate them out. In any case, we have Tel Rashas as the single greatest damage increasing item sorcerers have available to them now, so we need 3 types of damage. Our shock damage comes from teleporting on top of enemies. Our ice damage comes from ice blades. Fire, of course, is, you know, the damage that we're doing, and the vampiric power for poison. So that's how you keep that rolling for our 4 stacks. Your general battle plan then is kind of simple. You have got into the room, your enemy is at the other end, you want to be as far away from them as possible, get your ice blades, get your 2 hydras down, and then just start beaming. You'll spawn your walls of fires, they'll start exploding X-Fouls, and generally everything just disintegrates for you. Of course, occasionally you will need to do the teleport to maintain your stacks, but other than that, that really is it. Keep your hydras going, keep beaming, and watch the fireworks happen whenever it's a particularly large group of enemies, or you just need a bit of space, get your snake down, and enjoy the results. And against multiple targets, things get really crazy really quickly. Get your ice blades, your hydras, teleport in, jump back out, get your inferno down, and just start beaming, and I mean, it's just absurd. The frequency we get X-Files explosions is so cool to see. Oh, yes. Let's talk gear, your aspects, your stats, your uniques, and all of that then. We want to start with Flamescar. Of course, we're using Incinerate, so we're going to use the Incinerate unique because it is better than a random aspect with the usual affixes you might have on a wand. And because it is a wand, we get the extra lucky hit, which we very much want and need. This build has me sat at 80% with just normal, and then an extra 30 on top of that with a barrier. So yeah, this is why we're summoning so many firewalls, triggering so many X-Files, and everything sort of functions. It's the engine here. In any case, Flamescar then. The affixes, yeah, they're good for Incinerate, and the extra effect is just nice little bits of extra damage. It tracks, it explodes, it triggers your Flame Bolt enchant, it triggers the poison from the infection vampiric power, and generally adds a lot. So definitely worth using. Now to swap over to aspects then on your boots, and we are using normal boots as we don't need flicker step, we don't need lots of ult up time, and we don't need crit damage because this isn't a crit build, so Essus is out the window. And we do need lucky hit, so lucky hit chance with barrier, yeah, that is really, really nice, and we will have a barrier all the time, even more than all the time than the usual sorcerer, all of the barrier all of the time, and we'll get to why that is. On your focus, then, you want just more damage while you have a barrier. This is just a big, permanent, multiplicative increase. And then on your gloves, we've got extra Hydra and Hydra duration increased. Doubling your Hydra is double your burn, double your lucky hit chances, and, well, double a huge amount of damage. Then on your neck is where your disobedience is going to go, so we can, you know, do the stand there and tank on top of all our other DR, and it's really the only place left. It's kind of mandatory if you don't want to get splatted in harder content. That is it for normal aspects. So, we have Tybalt's Will, the extra damage is great, the mana regen is great, the affixes are great, this is just a great unique, and essentially everything wants to use this nearly all of the time, with just a few little niche exceptions. We have Tal Rashas, because of course we do. It is brilliant, a lot of damage, and it stacks up to silly numbers, and the affixes are perfect for what we're doing here. Then we have Godslayer Crown. We are immobilizing things at distance with our passives and all of our fire damage, which will then trigger the immobilize effect, pull everyone in, and blow them up. All at range, it's really nice. And the reason we have it especially then is because we don't use Raiment of the Infinite in this build. No, what we use is Soulbrand, the new unique chest. The extra health, great. The lucky hit chance with barrier, really great. We want so much lucky hit chance. And the damage reduction, great. But the actual effect is what's really important here. You get a barrier for 200% of your healing potion. And while you have the barrier, we get an extra up to 20% damage reduction. but the reason it works so extra especially well, on top of just being a really solid defensive piece, is that while channeling Incinerate, you can just press your potions to get a barrier without interrupting your channel, which means you stay permanently barriered while channeling Incinerate because of this chest, which means you permanently have conceited and you permanently have your lucky hit with barrier, while also just being permanently nigh unkillable. This is the real cherry on top of how tanky this setup is, and it works such a treat with a channeling style setup. And then finally, X-Files, the biggest source of damage. This is why we're stacking all of our damage over times so that they explode and just detonate everything. And yeah, this works really nicely together. In your weapons, you want extra damage over time. It's the only really applicable thing here. Extra health in your armor and armor in your jewelry. Then when it comes to your actual affixes, you want the following: lucky hit chance with barrier, mana cost reduction, resource generation, cooldown reduction, ranks to glass cannon, and mastery skills, movement speed, and then just general damage increases, like intelligence or damage too close, and so on and so forth. It's quite straightforward because we only actually have 4 pieces of gear that can roll affixes to care about. And yeah, ranks to defensive skills is fine too, especially on your boots. Then Vampiric powers. Here we have 2 general loadouts. This one is for killing non-bosses. We our Accursed touch, so they are permanently, well, vampiric cursed, and that means that they are permanently vulnerable and taking more vulnerable damage from Prey on the Weak, the classic deadly duo. We want ourselves Infection for a source of poison damage to get an extra stack of Rashas, and we want Domination because we will be immobilizing people all the time with our fire, and then they're going to take a lot more damage. And then lastly, Flowing Veins, just for 60% more damage over time to vampiric cursed enemies, which they always are. This is just a really nice, steady DPS increase that's worth having. I do wish that I could also fit in Bathe in Blood, but it's just worse than what we have. Well, no, technically I would swap Domination for it, but then you just don't have enough pack space to do it. This gives a big boost to both your survival and incinerates damage specifically, and it's really cool to see, but it just doesn't quite cut it in comparison. Then if you are facing a boss, get rid of Domination, and instead you want to put on the Coven, so you get that 10% extra multiplicative damage and mana coming in. And honestly, you could just leave this in for dungeons too. It's kinda arguable which is best in that regard between it and Domination. Then we have our Paragon board to look at. Stay with me point for point, and here we go. Only 2 resilience on the left. As much as I would like more all resist, we don't technically need it, and we need to save every point we can, as this is a very Paragon hungry build. In fact, I would recommend doing this if you are probably level 90 plus. Get your non-physical damage and go up and get more resist to all elements and more non-physical damage, and our first glyph is, as ever, Elementalist for just 15% multiplicative permanent damage increase and the extra non-physical. Up we go to Enchantment Master, our next board, for the usual trifecta of power in Elemental Balance, Elementalist, and Ruinous. We want to grab them in this way here, up in the middle now, so we save 2 points here, and otherwise everything is as you expect. Get Erudite 2, and then our glyph is reinforced for the damage reduction with a barrier, which is, as I showed, even more permanent in Incinerate thanks to Soulbrand, so this really works out. Then head up and right into your Burning Instinct board, which is actually taken now because it's all about that burning damage. Then we head down here to our next board, which is the Searing Searing Heat one, head to the right initially in this orientation to grab Flame Touch for just more fire damage, down to our glyph slot, which then is Pyromaniac. Now you do need this at level 15 to reach enough willpower to activate it, so do that, and then enjoy your extra 10% multiplicative. Over to the right for Ashes, and then we can head down here to exit, but make sure to veer to the middle in order to grab Combustion. The extra fire damage is really nice, and the extra pure % fire damage does help Frigid Fate later, but the crit damage isn't wasted because the Hydras can crit, and it also powers up the Burning Instinct node. So then we go right into said Frigid Fate board, arrange it in this orientation, and bring it straight down for the free 10% extra lucky hit, which is really good here. Then get said legendary node, and then continue right, split off up through weakness, grabbing these 3, well, I guess 4 intelligences for Adept here, in order to make your firewall just that much firewallier. And then the chilling for the intelligence to activate this. Then we go straight down. Sadly, don't have enough points to get more damage reduction, but that's okay. We are super tanky, and we end up in our final board, the Elemental Summoner board. Go straight down on the right side so we can pass through this dexterity, and then this is territorial, more damage to close enemies and damage reduction. This adds to the we can just ignore enemies that get to us because they won't hurt us. We can just keep channeling Incinerate, and it works wonders in that regard. Get the extra dexterity to make it happen, and then head over to Conjurer. This is just fine. We're mainly here to get said dexterity. And there you go. That is our complete Paragon board for Incinerate, and honestly, yeah, it does a really, really good job. I do wish I had more points, but I think the points that we do have been spent well. And, well, that's it. Incinerate complete, done as best as it can be, and it results in a build that honestly is really good. By Season 1 and pre-season standards, it's absolutely fantastic. It's just Season 2 has raised the power level so much that it's now just, yeah, solid. You can do all the endgame content you need to, you can kill things pretty much near instantly. It's just not as instantly as, for example, Ball Lightning, but then again, nothing is. So if you enjoy this, feel free to use it, because it certainly is powerful enough. For now then, like you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.